Hello! Today we are going to wire a single pole switch and a light receptacle. So first we need to go over what materials we need and where we left off in our other wiring activities. So first we left off with our breaker box fully wired with a 2-wire cable. We are going to keep that. And we are routed to our first gang box, which is plastic, with that wire. Notice how loose it is. We are going to continue to shorten it as we do more activities or more practicums. Okay, the next thing we need is an extra length of 2-wire cable. We will see why in the diagram. We also need a light receptacle. This is what the light bulb goes into, and a light gang box. That is this blue one hanging above right here. Okay, and we need a single pole switch. So we're going to cover this again in our diagram. Single pole switch is the only switch that has an on and off button. On being when it's up, off when it's down. It has 3 screws on it. It has a grounding screw, which is green. Okay. It also has 2 brass screws. So the brass screws mean we need to connect black wires from our 2-wire cable. And we are going to show you that process in the wiring diagram. We also need 3 wire nuts, okay, or solderless connectors. They have the spring in. We're going to go over how to make that splice again. We need our Phillips and flathead screwdrivers, our needle nose pliers, okay, our utility knife for cutting all of the insulation off of our cable that we need, and we need our electrician's pliers to strip our cable off, or our wires off. So we do not need this. This was just laying extra. But what we do need is a light switch cover, which is this bad boy right here. That's just to finish it off. And we'll need some screws to screw this up into the gang box for the lights. But we will also need a light bulb, but we will get further into that later. But I want to go over our second diagram a little bit further in depth. Okay, so we have from our power source 2-wire cable with ground. We are using 14 gauge 2-wire cable, which means it has 3 wires. It has a black wire, it has a white wire, and a ground wire or bare wire. And we will be using 2-wire cable to our light as well from our switch. So 2-wire cable coming in, single pole switch, 2 screws on one side and grounding screw. Okay, and then our light receptacle up here. So our 2 wires are coming in. Our black wire is going to go to the bottom brass screw on the single pole switch. This needs to be the power coming in. Okay, this is not flip-floppable or reversible. It has to come in the bottom and go out the top. The white wires, which are neutral, are hooked together in a pigtail with a wire nut. Okay, that goes up, and the white wire is connected to the silver screw on the light receptacle. The black wire coming off of the second cable that is going out of the box, out of the gang box, and to the other gang box hanging from above the ceiling box and down, the black wire goes to the brass screw. The ground wire, if this box was metal, would be put to the ground screw. But because we have a plastic gang box, it is actually just going to have a wire nut on it and be up tightly up in the box. So we are going to start with our switch, and I'm going to bring us zoomed in a little bit closer. But first we need to bring our cable down. So this would not be typical of wiring a house, but we are going to do my method of slicing off the insulation beforehand. 6 inches, and we're just going to score very carefully and gently all the way around. not to go into the insulation of the other wires. So I didn't score enough, and I need to just, there we go. Right like that, and it should slide right up. Okay, we'll come back to the other parts of the insulation. So we're going to do that to this side too, just because it's easier. So I'm going to twist my cable around my knife very gently so that I don't puncture any of the wires. I'm going to close my utility knife, I don't need it anymore, and pull off the cable sheath or the cable insulation. Then we're going to come in, take the paper insulation off of the grounding wire as well. Okay, so that's stripped. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. This one for my diagram is a little longer. You probably will have a shorter one depending upon where your light gang box is. Okay, so now I'm going to weave this through. I'm going to first bring my wire through my gang box for my light, and these have like little almost like a bracket where that holds the cable in there really nicely. Notice there's a hole at the top of your wiring wall. You're going to stick your wire through the hole, okay, or your cable through the hole, and then through this hole again. It's going to be loose. I put extra wire in, and now it's going to come through the box, the gang box down here where our switch is going to be. But notice, now I have two wires coming in from above. I don't like doing that, so I'm going to come and bring my first wire coming from my gang, or from my, not gang box, but from my breaker box or service entrance panel. I'm going to bring it up through the bottom, through one of the holes in the bottom. Okay, I just like that to separate it. I'm going to bring this down and zoom in. Okay, give me a second. There we go. And I'm going to bring this down as well so that you can see much better. So we have our two cables coming now. We have our cable from above. Remember, we should have about 3/4 of an inch of sheath coming into the breaker box. So this would be normal. Okay, so 3 inches coming out of the box, 6 inches total stripped. So now I have two 2-wire cables and my single pole switch. I need to strip all of my wire ends off of in my cables and make my loops or my splices. So first, there we go. I am going to strip the black wires. The black wires are going to have hooks on them which go onto the switch. So I take my pliers, I find 14 solid on here. Okay, I'm going to take about a 1/2 inch and strip it off. I'm going to do the same thing for the black wire. 1/2 inch, and I got the insulation separated, but I need to do that, and I bumped my tripod in the middle of that. So we saw in the diagram that these two need to be put together, and these two need to be put together, tied together with wire nuts. So we're going to make our black ones go off to the side. I'm going to put the one from above going to the light switch upward, and the one going into the light switch from the power source over here, okay, the power source one going off to the side to the bottom. And I'm going to bend those over to the side too. So now I'm going to focus on my white wires, which are tied together with a pigtail or a wire nut. So I'm going to strip off more to do this. So I still go 14 solid wire. I'm going to strip off about 1 inch, and we've practiced this one before. Okay, so I strip that off, and I strip off about 1 inch from the other one. I want them to match, and I might have to strip off a little more of the insulation. Nope, it's actually pretty even. Okay, so I'm going to go grab a lineman's pliers. That's going to make our life much easier. Okay, so the lineman's pliers is in your box. It's the big one. that has the very blunt end, or the very, very blunt end. We're going to use that in combination with our needle nose pliers. So I am going to clamp these with my needle nose pliers pretty far up to hold them together in place. And then I'm going to take this linesman's pliers, which you can't see my hand very well, so that you can see me twisting it, and I'm going to twist it clockwise, the two wires together, so they make a nice, neat twist. We want a nice, neat twist. But we're going to see that our end is going to be a little rough. Okay, so I have my inch twisted pretty good. It's nice and tight. Then I'm going to take my electrical pliers that has the wire cutter on the bottom, and I'm going to snip the end off so that we see about 3/4 of an inch. We must turn that clockwise or else the wire nut will not stay on properly. So this also turns clockwise, and it's meant to be nice and tight. You're going to turn it until it resists and you can't turn it anymore, kind of bounces back. So this is a very good solderless connector or connection or pigtail. Okay, so I'm going to put my white wires off to the side. I'm done with them now. The other pigtail I need to do is for my ground wire. Well, I can't put two ground wires to one screw very well. So I need a third ground wire, or a little piece, which we call a jumper. And this is a little bit long. Your jumper should be about 6 inches as well. So now we're going to put 3 of them together. I'm going to put this one in as well. I'm going to pull out a little bit out of the box so that I can line them up at the end. So then I'm going to take my needle nose pliers again and see if I can get all 3. Some people like to use the linesman's pliers for this one because you can grab them all, and that's okay. I've actually got a good grip on it, so I'm not going to mess with that. And then I'm going to turn with my needle nose pliers clockwise, and it's not going to be as pretty as the other one, and this is going to take practice. That's why there's a lot of little splices or little pieces of wires in your kit, so that you can practice putting 3 together, putting 2 together. So now I have a messy end. You can see that if I bend it off to the side. I just trim that with my electrician's pliers or electrical pliers, and now I have a nice connection. Okay, then I'm going to put my solderless connector on, or my wire nut on, and now that is done. So all of my connections are done, and I can pull out my jumper, which I'm going to use on my ground screw. Okay, so now I have my 2 black wires that I need to connect to my switch. So I'm going to bring up, just so I keep track of them, the bottom one is the power coming in, which needs to go to the bottom of the switch, and the top wire is the power going out, which needs to go to the top of the switch. So I just have them bent up. I'm going to zoom out just a hair. All right, so these need to go clockwise, and I need to loosen these screws all the way on this switch with my screwdriver. Okay, not all the way so they come out, but so that we can get the wire around this post of the screw. Okay, so we're ready to go there. Now I'm going to take my needle nose pliers. These are both going the same way for clockwise. So clockwise would be going this way. So I'm going to bend both of these loops up. Nice little neat loop. Okay, and we want to go 2/3 or half to 2/3 of the way around. Okay, and that should be just about perfect. So we want that insulation to land on that little bracket or little pad in there of metal. So I'm going to do the same thing for this one. Okay, and I may not have had enough insulation stripped off of this one. No, I don't. So I'm going to come back, straighten it out, and I'm going to strip off just a little insulation so that I have a good connection. Okay, and then I'm going to bend my loop again. Okay, and then I'm going to bend it back a little bit. So now I have 2 loops. Both of them should be facing up because that would be clockwise with my screw. So I'm going to bend them over for demonstration purposes like that. Now I'm going to take my switch, reminding myself that I need to take the wire or the cable and the wire coming from the power source and put it on the bottom. Okay, so I hook that in there. I should be nice and tight around my post of my screw. And I'm going to use a Phillips this time. I used a flathead in my last video. But I'm going to screw this on firmly. You're going to feel the wire tug and get tighter around the screw post because we're tightening it clockwise. Righty tighty, lefty loosey. So now, checking to make sure that this is the cable going out to the light, I'm going to attach this one so we're going clockwise. And I'm going to come in, I'm going to hook it in there. So I might have made my loop a little small, which that's okay. When you put it around, it's going to spread a little bit. I'm going to hold that nice and tight. Screw that in with my Phillips screwdriver as well. And that is nice, a nice loop. Both of these are really nice loops. So the insulation is just starting where this little landing pad, this brass landing pad for the wire is ending. And that is exactly what we want for neatness. Then I only have 1 screw left on my switch, and that is the grounding screw. And I have my jumper from my pigtail that I made before. So we want to make sure that we're going clockwise with this one. So now we need to go this way. We bend a nice little loop. Nice and tight. They need to be pretty fine. And then I'm going to bend it back just so that it's in a hook shape. Okay. And I need to loosen this one as well. So this one actually is a little bit easier to loosen with your flathead screwdriver sometimes, just the way the screw head is shaped. Then I'm going to attach that just the same as the other ones going in. So I didn't make my loop wide enough at the bottom, so I'm going to take my pliers, widen it a little bit, hook it in there, right like that, and I'm going to screw this in. And you're going to really see that tightening around the post action on this. But this is a nice tight loop, okay? It goes around there very nicely. So now I'm going to firmly push this all in neatly. Okay, so all these wires need to fit in this box and bend back. And then this needs to go in. So some of your cable might come out the back. That's okay because we made it longer than it should be. Okay, so now I have them in the holes, and I'm going to use my Phillips screwdriver for this. And I'm going to firmly attach this. So this needs to be pushed back. We don't want to see that, and this wire needs to be pushed back as well. Okay, it's because we are going to put our light switch cover on this. All right, so then I'm going to screw this in relatively quickly. Like that. The bottom one. Remember, this is how it firmly is attached to the wall and it doesn't wiggle around. Okay, so these brackets. So now I have my light switch cover that goes right over the top of it. That's pretty standard. And the screws that go with your light switch cover are either a cream color or a white color, and they are a flathead screw. They're pretty short. And there is holes on the mounting bracket of the light switch itself, specifically for putting the cover on. So we're covering up any wires that might be peeking out the edges, which they shouldn't be. You should have them tucked in there really nice and tight. Okay, so then I'm going to put that in there, like that. And now my light switch is done and it's off. Okay, so now we need to work on the receptacle or the light part of it. So I'm going to bring the camera over. Now I am all focused up at the top at the light receptacle part. Okay, here's our light receptacle and our gang box, our ceiling box. So there's 3 wires coming in because it is a 2-wire cable. We have white wire, we have a ground wire, and we have a black wire, the hot wire. So right away, I know that I need to just put a cap on my ground wire, and I'm going to tuck that back up in there. Okay, then I need to strip and make hooks. I'm going to grab my electrical plier to attach it to the light receptacle. So I need to strip off, just like before. We find the 14 solid, it's 14 gauge wire, about a 1/2 inch. Okay, about a little more. Right like that. Perfect. And we need to strip the black one off. So, if we're following our diagram and we're following our knowledge that we know, okay, let's do it a little short. We follow our knowledge we already know. We need to put the black wire to the brass screw and the white wire to the silver screw. So we look at the light receptacle, we have silver and we have brass. So I'm actually going to turn them this way and we are going to screw these out. We only need one side of this. So if we were connecting lights to lights, you would have another cable coming in this box and it would go to this screw. But we're only using 2 of the screws. These are firmly screwed down. So I need to take my needle nose pliers and make my hooks clockwise. So I have bent it down. I make my hook nice and little. Clockwise. Make my hook nice and little. Clockwise. Right like that. And it's about 2/3 of the way or half. Somewhere in between. That's good. So now I bring this up and I am going to put this on the white one. So it's a little easier when you're doing it yourself and not trying to film it. Okay, then I take my Phillips screwdriver and tighten my loop firmly. And I probably could have taken a little bit more insulation. See how it's kind of on the edge of going into the screw? We don't want it to go underneath the screw because that's going to reduce the amount of contact. So this one's just on the edge. The black one is going to be about the same. So I'm actually going to go like this for this one. So now I need to flip this. Clockwise is going the other way. And I'm going to bring it under like that. So now I see it. I don't have enough insulation stripped off. So I need to take my pliers and bend this straight again and take off more insulation. Okay, having to take off more is better than taking off too much. So then I'm going to bend my loop again. Okay. And then I'm going to hook it up. So I want to make sure this is counterclockwise. I don't want to go counterclockwise. I want to go clockwise. So I'm going to bend and flip my wire around. So I already made my pretty loop. I don't want to mess that up. So I can just go like that with my pliers. Now see how I have more less insulation showing? That's going to be a much better contact. Okay. Then I'm going to put that around my screw, pulling it nice and tight around there. Now see how the wire is just at the edge? That's what we want. I'm going to tighten that up. Right like that. So now my black wire is to my brass screw, my white wire is to my silver screw. Then we are going to attach it up. Okay. There should be 2 larger screws in your kit. I only have one handy. because we're running low on them. These are going to go up into the box. You're going to have to manipulate your wires to go up into the box. Okay, and this is going to fit nice and tightly around your gang box. Then we need to find the hole. And this screw is much too small, so this is a smaller one. I'm going to go grab a bigger one. Actually. And we're going to attach it to the holes in here. So this is the tricky part. But it's really hard to test your light bulb if you don't attach it with at least one screw up into the thing. So you have 2 screws in your kit. I just don't have one in mine. Oh, that one's too big. So we gotta go back to this one. There we go. You can see it coming out the top up here, the screw. I'm gonna screw that in. And this is for a standard light bulb. And there's nothing special about this. I'm actually gonna put the other one in over here as well. That way I have a nice firm mounting for my light. Oh, I did miss the hole. That happens. I'm actually going to move the camera so I can come in and see what I'm doing. But these are bigger screws. And I might be just working with one for this one. So this is actually secured pretty good. Then I'm going to take a light bulb. You can use any standard light bulb, you can use an LED bulb, and we're going to see if our light bulb works. So we're going to screw it in, just like you would a normal light bulb. There's no power around, so don't worry about it coming on at you. Okay, so our light bulb is firmly mounted in there. I'm going to zoom out and go through the testing procedure. Actually, I have to zoom out a little more. There we go. And we're going to plug this in. To our power source. Okay. We are going to turn our breaker on. We have it off. Going through all of our safety measures. So we never, ever, ever do anything while the breaker's on and this is plugged in. So we turn it on. Okay, so now we have power, and now we're going to see if our light bulb lights up with the flick of our switch. And it does, because we followed our diagram properly. Okay, so you can see it says on, we turn it off, it says off. This is the only switch that has that, and because we covered it, everything is safe for us to use. Okay, and it's kind of fun when you get it to work. So, in summary, I'm going to turn my breaker off and show you, rip it apart for you just to go backwards. Okay, so I take my power source out, I take my light bulb out of the receptacle. Okay, put that off to the side. I undo the screw. I'm going to need a Phillips screwdriver. Here, so I can bring this down. Light receptacle coming off. Okay, screws coming out. We're going to put that in our box so we don't lose that. We see our 2 wires, and our ground wire is nicely, neatly stashed up here. Okay, so we're going to take these off now, our pretty loops, but to remind you, the black one went to the brass screw and the white one went to the silver screw. So I'm going to quickly do this. Take my loop off, undo this one. Ready, tighty, loosey. Okay, so now I have those out. I'm going to take my wire nut off of there, and then I'm going to remove the cable. So I'm going to actually punch in the little thingy at the top and take the cable out all the way, because we won't need this for our next wiring activity. So we're going to put this off to the side. It also helps if you snip your loops off before you bring it there. That's what I'm going to do, actually. There we go. Bring that through. Bring it through the hole. Okay. And then we're going to take apart our light switch. So I'm going to take off my light switch cover. So we need our flathead screwdriver for that. Take out our fancy painted screws. Okay. And that slot on this fancy painted screw is not very deep, so it's kind of tricky to get them out. And I get it to a certain point, I'm just going to use my fingers. Okay. Then we're going to take apart our mounting. So you can use a Phillips or a flathead. It has both capabilities there. The top one is kind of stripped out. I'm going to unscrew this one. Pop everything out. Get you all ready for the next wiring activity. Okay. So I'm still screwed in. That was stripped out more than it actually is. So depending upon how old the box. So this one's pretty old. Your box on yours might be newer. And I want to get these mounting ears off. Okay, so my switch is now disconnected from the gang box mounted. We're going to pull it apart just to dissect and look at it again. So we had our two sets of cables coming in. We had a 2-wire cable coming in from the bottom from our power source or our breaker box. And we had our 2-wire cable going out to our light bulb going up the top. Okay, so the black wire on the switch, let's bring it in a little bit. Okay, our black wire from the top going out is at the top of the switch. You can see it says off. And then our black wire with the power coming in is going to this screw at the bottom. The bottom one has to be the power coming in a single pole switch. And then we have our grounding screw. So I'm going to take this all apart just for the sheer fact of getting ready for our next activity. So I'm going to loosen all these screws, take the loops out. Remember, you're going to have to shimmy those out because they're in there nice and tight if you did it properly. Okay. Shimmy that one out. Our 2 black wires. We're going to take our ground wire off. Okay, loosen that. Now our switch is completely disconnected. And we're getting ready for the next one, so that means we're going to take the 2-wire cable out of this box. We don't need the 2-wire cable. We're going to switch to 3-wire cable for the next activity. So now I need to disconnect all of my pigtails. I simply turn this counterclockwise, and I turn this one counterclockwise to get them off. I take my electrical pliers. I'm going to snip off all of my loops, just so that I can practice every time. Do not snip the loop off of your jumper, though. You can reuse that later. especially if you made it long enough. You're going to snip that pigtail splice off and put your jumper off to the side. And then you're going to snip these 2 white wires off so that they're disconnected. And then you can take your 2-wire cable out and bring it through this hole and put it off to the side. So now we're back to where we started at the beginning of this adventure. We have our breaker box wired with 2-wire cable going to our first gang box down here. All right. Oops, there we go. So we are back to a larger view. And we will see you for our next activity in the next video.